Welcome to the deep dive. We're here to cut through the noise and really get to what matters. Today, we're plunging into the political situation in Thailand. It's incredibly intricate, evolving really rapidly.
Yeah, it's quite something. A real whirlwind, you could say. You've got swirling rumors about cabinet changes, a whole barrage of legal challenges hitting the very top offices.
Right, and then these urgent national security threats, things like cross-border crime and these looming international trade issues. So our mission here is to try and untangle this complex web. We want to distill the key insights from all the reports and commentary out there.
Exactly. And by the end of this, you should have a much clearer picture. We'll cover the political maneuvering around the cabinet, those legal challenges facing the prime minister and her family,
Yeah.
the cross-border crime fight, especially against scammers, and those big international trade hurdles that could, really impact the economy.
Think of it as your shortcut, really. A way to understand what's actually at play in Thailand right now without getting totally lost in the day-to-day headlines. Okay, so let's unpack this. We should start with the shifting sands of power, cabinet formation, political maneuvering, all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
There have been these persistent rumors, haven't there, about Prime Minister Paetongtarn potentially resigning, especially maybe after the fiscal year 2069 budget passes.
That's 2026 for most of us, yeah. But the few Thai Party Secretary General Sarawang Thong, he came out really strong against that. Called it fake news, basically.
Yeah.
Said unequivocally the government's staying put. No resignations, no dissolving the House.
It's interesting, though, this perception, you hear it a lot, that former PM Thaksin Shinawatra is, well, a key force behind her staying firm.
Absolutely. And the narrative is that for the Shinawatra family, staying in power isn't just politics. It's seen as crucial, because of all those outstanding legal cases.
Almost like a fight for survival, politically speaking.
Kinda, yeah. And speaking of the family, we saw news recently about Yingluck Shinawatra, didn't we? Celebrating her birthday in Hong Kong.
That's right. Still no sign of her actually returning to Thailand, despite some earlier talk about it. Adds another layer, doesn't it?
It really does. It just layers onto the family's whole political story.
So if staying in power is that critical, what does that mean for actually, running the country, making decisions?
Well, that's the tricky part. Reports suggest the government's influenced by all these different factions. You hear about the London faction, Thaksin's allies abroad. Then the Bonchan Songla faction, that's like the family power base in Thailand.
And the PM's mother apparently has her own faction, and even allies of the former PM, Shraddha.
Exactly. So you've got this mix of influences, and it makes decision-making incredibly complex. Sometimes you have to wonder if national interests are really the top priority.
Or if it's more about managing these internal group dynamics, which could slow things down, right? On critical issues like the economy or security.
Precisely. It can lead to a kind of paralysis. And adding to the complexity, you've now got, 8 or 9 empty cabinet seats? After the Bunda Thai party pulled out.
So a reshuffle is needed anyway in this already difficult environment.
Right. And then there's this whole confusing situation with the Rum Tai Sang Chart Party, the RTSC.
Yes. Tell us about that.
Well, one of their MPs, Judakrai Leok, came out saying RTSC's condition for joining the government is Paetongtarn resigning. And specifically resigning in favor of Chai Kasam Nitasiri from Fear Thai's own quota. He even mentioned that leaked audio clip as proof.
Okay, but then
other RTSC members are denying it, flat out saying those aren't the conditions, so it's chaos.
leads to speculation the party might be splitting maybe into 2 factions.
That's exactly the speculation. Meanwhile, despite all this, Few Thai seems, remarkably confident. Some reports suggest they think they can secure 270, maybe 280 seats. Feilik from the Klatam party, Thamanat Pumfeo's party, seemed very sure. Mentioned Tamat's uncommon coordination skills.
Interesting phrasing. So the original plan was to finalize the cabinet by June 22nd.
Yeah, that timeline looks very uncertain now. Very much up in the air with everything that's happened.
Okay, so this internal political maneuvering is intense. But like you said, it doesn't happen in a vacuum. It impacts how they handle external stuff.
Right. And a big driver of all this volatility is this barrage of legal challenges. The prime minister is under really intense scrutiny.
Tell us about the main one, the Senate petition.
Okay, so on June 20th this year, 36 senators, led by General Suwatasana, they filed a formal petition. Went through the Senate President, Mangkol Surasaja, straight to the Constitutional Court.
And the big headline was the request for immediate suspension.
Exactly. A huge deal. They asked the court to order Paetongtarn to suspend her duties as PM immediately. until there's a final ruling. They're citing Article 82, Paragraph 2 of the Constitution, which actually allows for that. So it's a serious constitutional move.
Wow. That definitely echoes some past political crises. What are the specific grounds they're citing for disqualification?
They're pointing to Article 178, Paragraph 1 and 4, combined with Article 164, that's about honesty and integrity, and Article 165, which deals with severe ethical violations.
So basically, the legal standards a PM has to meet under the Constitution.
Precisely. And the core piece of evidence they're using, it's that leaked audio clip, the conversation reportedly between Paetongtarn and former Cambodian PM Hun Sen about sensitive border issues.
Okay. And I heard there was also a parallel action.
Yes, it's what some are calling a dual-track approach.
Huh.
On the very same day, the Senate president sent the complaint over to the National Anti-Corruption Commission, the NACC. They're asking the NACC to investigate potential severe ethical violations and abuse of power separately.
And this dual track, we've seen this before, haven't we?
We have. It's very similar, almost mirroring the legal arguments used in the case that led to former PM Srethavisan's dismissal. That also involved honesty, integrity, ethical standards.
So a familiar playbook, perhaps. Did the Senate committee provide more details?
They did. The Senate Committee on Military and State Security outlined 3 main legal points for the court. First, alleged breaches of the Constitution itself, things like the duty to protect national interests, state security. Second, potential criminal code violations, like sedition or malfeasance.
Serious charges.
Very. And third, issues around political ethics, like criticizing military leaders, creating disunity, things that could lead to ethical violations.
And it's not just the current PM feeling the heat, right? Thaksin himself is still dealing with legal issues.
That's right. He's got his ongoing Layer 14 cases, these older challenges being brought back. And he's apparently facing questioning from 20 more witnesses in July in the Supreme Court's Criminal Division for Political Office Holders.
And that Hun Sen connection keeps coming up. There was that photo.
Ah, yes, the photo of Thaksin with Hun Sen, supposedly in Hun Sen's bedroom, although many think it was probably a staged office setting. But that image, yeah, it's viewed by some as a real vulnerability for the Shinawatra family.
And specifically for the PM, it's sometimes framed as Hun Sen being able to, I don't know, blackmail or pressure her, maybe playing on perceived inexperience.
That's the interpretation some are giving it, yes.
Yeah.
It adds to the pressure. Analysts are saying Paetongtarn could be facing at least 4 major legal cases now. There's one potentially related to budget allocation, an Article 144 issue, plus this big Senate petition. The legal pressure is definitely mounting. Creates a constant cloud, really.
Okay, so alongside the legal battles, there's this other kind of siege happening. From these increasingly sophisticated cross-border criminal networks, let's talk about the fight against scammers.
Right. The Prime Minister declared this a national agenda, a critical national security threat.
And there was some success before, wasn't there, in Myanmar?
Yes, measures like cutting off water, electricity, internet in Maiwadi, western Myanmar, that reportedly cut scam cases by something like 80%. Quite effective.
But the problem hasn't gone away, it's just shifted.
Exactly. The situation in Cambodia seems to be getting worse. A recent UNODC report actually flagged Cambodia as a major global hub for these call center scams, often linked to, illicit money flows, maybe corruption allowing it to flourish.
The scammers themselves are changing tactics.
They are. This is a key insight, really. They're not just relying on sneaking across land borders anymore. Now they're reportedly using legitimate passports and just flying directly into Cambodian airports, Siem Reap, Phnom Penh.
Wow, okay. That makes it much harder to catch them, I imagine.
Significantly harder. It requires much better intelligence, much more international cooperation, especially at the airports, to try and track and stop these people.
So, given this shift to air travel, what's the government's plan?
Well, the Prime Minister called for an urgent meeting, scheduled for Monday, June 23rd, bringing together all the security agencies. The goal is a comprehensive strategy against all sorts of cross-border crime scammers, drugs, money laundering, human trafficking, but with a specific focus on tackling this new air travel tactic.
Shows they recognize how fast these groups adapt, I guess. Needs a coordinated response.
Definitely.
Okay, let's shift gears slightly to the international economic front. These looming trade issues, particularly with the U.S.
Yeah, this is another urgent one. There's a deadline coming up fast, less than 3 weeks now, for U.S.-Thailand trade. Talks about potential Trump-era tariffs.
And the stakes are high if they don't reach a deal.
Extremely high. Thai goods could face a massive tariff hike in the U.S. from the current 10%, potentially up to 36%.
36%? That would seriously hurt competitiveness in a huge market.
Absolutely devastating for many Thai exporters. And just for comparison, Vietnamese leaders who are facing similar issues have apparently already had 3 rounds of negotiations with the U.S.
So that highlights maybe a difference in approach or urgency.
You could suggest that, yeah.
Yeah.
It certainly raises questions about Thailand's negotiation strategy here.
And there's been some criticism, hasn't there, from a former ambassador?
Yes. Pisan Manawapat, the former Thai ambassador to Washington, he made some pretty pointed comments, suggested the PM's advisors might lack the needed skills, or maybe the professional advice they are getting from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs isn't being listened to.
Implying it leads to a weaker position.
That was the implication, a loss of dignity and bargaining power. He said Thailand has a full hand of cards, basically, strong negotiating points, but isn't playing them effectively.
A critique of high-level economic diplomacy there.
Seems so. It points to potential issues in how these crucial international negotiations are being handled.
Okay, so you've got internal political chaos, legal threats, sophisticated crime, major economic risks. It paints a picture of pretty severe national problems.
It does. And there's a growing argument that tackling these requires a truly professional team. Some are even saying a new cabinet might not be enough without, fundamental changes in how things are run.
And there was a specific proposal discussed recently on that show, Koo Hai Kid.
Yes, featuring commentators Vera, Wisut, and Suthichai. They talked about a potential path forward, presented as maybe the optimal way for the country to navigate this. It's quite bold.
Okay, let's unpack that proposal. It sounds like a multi-step plan.
It is. Step 1. Prime Minister Paetongtarn Shinawatra resigns.
Right off the bat, resignation. Okay.
Step 2. A new prime minister is selected. A Newton Charnvirakul was specifically mentioned as a possibility.
A Newton. Okay. And the key part seems to be about the cabinet appointments.
Exactly. Step 3. The new PM commits to appointing 4 or 5 independent professional outsiders to key ministries. Specifically mentioned were Interior, Finance, Defense, and Transport. Foreign Affairs was suggested as a possible 5th. And these people would get real autonomy to tackle the crises, like a technocratic core.
Interesting. Creating space for non-politicians in key roles. What happens next in this roadmap?
Then step 4. The fiscal year 2069-2026 budget gets passed, but then it's restructured, specifically to tackle the economic problems and those looming Trump tariffs effectively.
So pass it, then fix it. And the final step.
Finally, step 5. The new prime minister dissolves parliament, but with a clear timeline, maybe by the end of this year or early next year, setting the stage for new elections.
Wow, that's quite a sequence. What's the supposed logic behind it? What are the claimed benefits?
Well, it's presented as being fully constitutional, as a way to avoid deeper political instability, maybe even avoid a coup. And it gives the public a clear choice later on.
And for the Shinawatras.
It's also framed as a potential path for the family to sort of gracefully step back, to show they don't just cling to power.
It's a neat package on paper, but you have to wonder, right? Given the realities of Thai politics, how feasible is a plan that relies on so many steps, including, well, voluntarily giving up the premiership?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Get a comprehensive framework certainly designed to address the current turbulence, but like you said, actually making it happen. That requires a level of political consensus, a willingness to compromise that hasn't always been easy to find.
Right. So as we wrap up this deep dive, it's clear Thailand's facing these multiple, really interconnected challenges. Internal politics, legal battles, crime, trade pressures.
They all feed into each other, don't they? It's not just separate issues. It creates this incredibly complex national situation, demands a really effective, unified response.
Which might be hard to achieve with the current divisions.
Indeed. And this complex interplay, it raises a bigger question for all of us, really. In a world flooded with information, how do we, as citizens, actually engage with and make sense of these critical issues shaping our countries?
Exactly. Which leads us to our final thought for you today. It's a common saying in political commentary, but maybe more relevant than ever. Politics is too important to be left to the politicians. Think about it. What's our role as citizens in holding leaders accountable, in making sure that public money, national effort is genuinely focused on solving problems, not just serving political agendas or, self-promotion?
It's really a call for all of us to stay engaged, to think critically, not just about Thailand's future, but about responsible governance everywhere.
Absolutely. A lot to think about. Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive.